I heard dripping coming from my basement, and when I checked it out, I discovered something horrible.
I like to think of myself as a normal sort of fellow. I never married, but I have a good job and a good routine every day. My day starts the same every morning. I wake up, brush my teeth, use the bathroom, shower, and make myself some breakfast before heading to work. It's been this way for a long time now, pretty much ever since I moved into my house and began my job. I live right outside the city, in the suburbs of Detroit, in an older house that I got for a good price. Nothing weird has happened until pretty recently. Like I said, it's an old house, but about a week ago, I noticed a noise that I had not heard my house make before. It was a strange dripping sound followed by a thumping sound. At first it was really quiet and I almost had to strain my ears to hear it, but after a day or two it became apparent that the sound was not going away, as if it wanted me to check on it. It had been coming from my basement or the stairs leading down to the basement. Eventually, yesterday actually, I opened the door to see what it was, and when I went down the stairs I could not find anything, but the sound had stopped. Once I went into the basement, the noise had subsided, which I found odd, but decided thinking about it too hard would only freak me out more than it had already, and forgot about it by dinner time. I went to bed without worrying about the sound. However, when I woke up this morning, it was back. I went to check out the basement once more. I opened the door, and around halfway down the stairs it stopped. Again, I had found this odd but tried my best to forget it and continue with my routine. However, because of the detour for checking on the sound, I had lost around 5 minutes of time to get ready, and together with the longer than usual shower I had taken, I did not have time to make myself some breakfast and went to work hungry. I got to work and put all my things down and went into my office to take my mind off the sound while also trying to get started on another busy day. This day in particular was busier than usual, resulting in me having to skip my lunch break, which I was not pleased about. As vice president of my company, I had moved up the ranks ever since starting there. I had plenty of people coming into my room with requests and giving me more work to do, along with phone calls going off almost incessantly. This, combined with my empty stomach, had made me quite irritable, and things only got worse when I looked at my clock and realized I had worked until almost 9 p.m., when I usually got off at 5. I finished up the last thing I was doing and went home, stopping at a local diner for a bite to eat since I hadn't eaten since dinner the night before. I left the diner feeling more refreshed than I had the night before, but my irritability returned upon the entry into my home that night. The sound was still there, only louder this time. Drip, 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 thump. At this point, I was so tired from my day that I didn't bother to check on it. Besides, I knew what I would find. Nothing. Nothing has appeared every time I've checked on it, so I figured not to stress about it and just go to sleep. I went to sleep and slept like a rock. In the morning, once again, it was still there. But I ignored it and did my routine, not forgetting to eat breakfast this time, and went to work. Busy day again, but nothing like yesterday. I got out at around 5:30 and got home around 6:30. Traffic in the city is crazy around rush hour. Once again, I heard the sound when I got home, but once again, it had increased in volume. This was beginning to concern me, so I went to check on it again. I opened my basement door, and it was louder than ever. I slowly walked down the stairs, peeking into my basement to check if I could see anything, but I could not. On the third step down, the noise vanished. What is going on? I said out loud, feeling more freaked out than I had ever been before. I was really starting to worry that something sinister was afoot in my house, so I went online and searched paranormal investigators and found one quite close to my house. There was an email on his website which I contacted and asked when he was available to check my house, along with a brief description of my problems and concerns. He emailed within the hour and offered to come by the next day after I was out of work. I agreed, and that was that. He would come over tomorrow and solve my problem. I was satisfied with that knowledge and went to sleep. Though when I woke up, I was surprised to see that the sound was gone. Intrigued, I went to my basement to see what was what, and to my surprise, nothing was there. No sound and no evidence that supported that there was a sound. I had no video or audio recording of the sound, so unless the sound returned by the time I arrived back home, the investigator would have nothing to go off of. I went off to work and did my thing for 9 long hours, returning home at around 5:45, where I messaged the investigator that I was home and he could come over. He responded with an okay and said he'd be over within the hour. I opened my door, and again, to my surprise, no sound. I was really confused now. The sound that had been going off almost non-stop every day for the last 2 weeks suddenly disappears once I find a paranormal investigator? I just sat in my living room until the investigator, named Mike, showed up. He knocked on my door, and we exchanged greetings, and I allowed him in. He looked around the place a little bit before swinging around to face me to ask the obvious question, which had no answer. "Where is the sound you described to me last night?" I honestly have no idea. I went to check on the noise last night, and when I got halfway down the steps, it was gone, and it hasn't come back yet, is all I could tell him, as I was confused as he was about the whole situation.
Okay, well, I suppose I'll go check the basement and use some of my equipment that I've brought. Do your best to just stay upstairs while I conclude my findings. When I'm finished, I will come back upstairs and tell you what I've found. Does that sound like a plan? Mike asked me. Yes, that sounds perfect. Thanks for coming out, I responded. He went downstairs after our brief conversation, and I did as he requested and stayed out of his way until he was done. After maybe 30 minutes, he returned to my living room and revealed to me that he could not find a single abnormal or paranormal thing about the basement. This surprised me, but he was the expert, not me, so I trusted his findings. I wished him a good night as he left, and I sat back down on my couch, confused as to everything that had happened. There was no way that noise was normal house noise. I just sat there and watched TV until it was time to go to sleep. I went to sleep a little relieved, but still mostly confused. I woke up in the morning, half expecting for it to be back, but to my surprise and delight, it was gone. It was as if a weight had been lifted and I could be happy again. It was Friday, too, so I had the weekend to look forward to. I went to work and had a normal day, going to the bar with some of my close friends after work, and we stayed there until around 9 or 10. Of course, we had a designated driver as to not be unsafe, and that driver just so happened to be me. After I had dropped everyone at their homes, I drove to mine, completely forgetting about the noise that had strangled me for the past 2 weeks. I backed into my driveway and killed the engine, walking up the side door where I always entered, when I heard it again. This time it had gotten so loud it was coming through the door. I opened my door and it was louder than ever before. It was as if the noise was coming from directly in front of me. Obviously, I was more than freaked out, but I clambered up my stairs to my bedroom where the noise seemingly began to fade. This relieved me for just a short while. I still wondered what this sound was and what it was emanating from. I decided the next day I would scour my basement for clues as to what this thing was. But not tonight. It was too late tonight and I was too tired. I got ready for bed and went to sleep. I did not sleep well. The noise, though fainter, was loud enough to keep me awake for most of the night. As the sun began to stream through the blinds of the master bedroom window, I felt relief, as everything is less scary during the day for some reason. I hopped out of bed and did my normal thing, brushed my teeth, used the bathroom, and showered. I did not go downstairs to make breakfast yet, however. I needed to see the source of this godforsaken noise. As I walked down the stairs to the main floor, I listened as the noise grew louder and louder. Drip, drip, drip.
Thump. I made it to the main floor and took a breath. I could hardly hear myself think from the severity of the noise now. I walked to the basement door. Another breath. I won't lie when I say I was terrified. I opened the door to the basement and flicked the light switch on. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except, of course, for the incessant noise. I took a step, and then another, and another. This time, though, the noise didn't stop but grew louder. Worry plagued my mind, and as I bent over to look into the basement, that's when it happened. The culmination of everything that had happened over the last 2 weeks came down to this. As I took a step and peeked out into the basement at the same time, I slipped on the hardwood steps and slammed my neck onto the step, breaking it. Blood rushed to my mouth as I slid down the stairs and landed on the landing with a loud thump. I lay there, and I could only listen as my blood trickled down the stairs with the sound I was now accustomed to. Drip, drip, drip. As I lay there, I finally understood what the noise had really been all along. It was the foreshadowing of my impending death at the hands of my own house.